But under our noses, our obsession with property has changed this country forever. And that's the real story. I'm John Henley. I'm on the sidelines of this property game. I've been abroad for 20 years. But now I'm back to a country that rarely thinks about anything else. The property market may have crunched to a halt for now, but a 300% increase in 10 years means there are plenty of city dwellers who've made a fortune from property. It's never been easier to swap the reality of big city stress for a fantasy of rural ease. It's a fact that 4/5 of us live in urban areas, and yet 3/4 of us would dearly like to live in the countryside. And I want to find out why. Particularly because it's actually not just a dream, it's increasingly becoming reality for more and more people. Every year, more than 100,000 of us sell up in the city to head out of town. For generations, we've believed that life is better in the country.
This place really, really gets under your skin, and you just think about it more and more and want to be here. I just felt that my heart was here more than it was in London.
I love London, but it's absolutely brilliant when you get out the train and the air is so different. It's an immediate relaxation. You just stop straight away.
I've seen it with friends of mine who used to live in London. They've moved out and their children suddenly, they've got colour in their cheeks, they're looking healthier. It's a much better way of life.
Do I want to bring my kids up in a city, or do I want them to have an old-fashioned childhood where they can play on the beach, play in the woods, where there is a community, people look out for each other?
The Southwest. Images fit for a glossy Sunday supplement, but for real. Over the past decade, more people have moved here than to any other part of Britain. But whether it's just for the weekend or forever, we all have our own dreams of country life. The great collective fantasy has driven prices up threefold and convinced us that these huge gains are here to stay. It's house prices that have changed the very fabric of the Southwest. When I was a kid, we had quite a few holidays in Cornwall, sort of bucket and spade, family holidays in rented cottages. And that was really all that my family aspired to, I think. But just when did it become a sort of a legitimate ambition to own a slice of the great British rural dream? Kingsand and Kingsand are a pair of quaint little fishing villages nestling side by side in the southeast corner of Cornwall. They're as pretty as a postcard, and the perfect place to observe our rural property obsession at work and figure out where it came from. It's beautiful. It's the most stunning situation, kind of nestled under these cliffs here. It's completely unspoilt. That's something that's really quite surprised me. I didn't kind of expect to find a little Cornish fishing village that wasn't overrun by souvenir shops and Cornish pisky vendors. It's absolutely beautiful. It's also completely deserted. You know, if you're looking for peace and calm and a complete absence of stress, then you'll certainly get it here. I can absolutely see why people would like to live here. I would like to live here. I wasn't the first stranger to fall for Kingsand's considerable charms. It turns out over a third of the houses here are now second homes. So what do the locals think? I had a date with Doll, the oldest lady in the village, who took me on a stroll down the street where she grew up. What were once fishermen's cottages are now prime chunks of waterfront real estate.
This is shut up. This one's shut up.
But there was nobody home.
This is shut up.
Yeah.
This shut up.
Yeah.
See, it's a dead village. Now, this is where I lived here.
Oh, really?
But it wasn't then done up like that. It was poor, poor, poor.
And so when you were little,
Oh,
there'd be
oh,
lots
oh,
of families, children, poor.
Yes, lashings of people. That shut up, that shut up, that shut up, and so is that.
So how many houses are actually lived in? 1, 2...
3, isn't it? The 2 with a pub. 2 with a pub.
And how do you feel about that?
Don't like it. It's killed the village.
Did there used to be more shops and...
Oh, yes, yes. Big shop where the post office and that gallery was. That was all a big shop, Mr. Tretherne. You could buy everything. You had no need to go out of the village. And that's the old post office. I've got to have bits and bobs.
Is that threatened then?
This is the one that's being shut.
All right. As all this cash has cascaded into Kingsand, local shops and services have gone under.
That's £1 million. You want to buy a house?
In 2001, you could still pick up a seafront cottage here for £185,000. Now the price tag attached to these cobbled streets and unspoiled beaches is more like £500,000. With cash-rich refugees from city living happy to pay through the nose, the feeling is that locals have been priced out of their own villages. How can that be worth £500,000?
Well, they'll sell it. Somebody from London will come down and buy it.
Kingsand was once a thriving fishing village. There were boats in the harbour, shops on the front, and the sounds of voices in the streets. What I'd thought was the ultimate rural idyll was actually a ghost town. The streets might have been empty, but up the hill I found a few signs of life. I gate-crashed the village lunch, a weekly hotspot for those locals who still do live here. I got 3 courses for £3.50 and the lowdown on the second home invasion.
When I think about moving, I think, well, what are you clinging on to? Because what you loved about this village was the fact that the people were wonderful. They cared about one another, they would help one another. You wouldn't believe the characters that we had in this village, and they're all gone.
Jenny is the village hairdresser and a 4th generation Kingsand.
The village was divided into them, really. I think that people that come here with their second home, they're very aware that, you know, we don't like it. They are aware of that.
They're aware that they're kind of intruding.
Yes, they are aware of that, for sure.
Do there times when you just really despair and get really angry? And...
I'm a bit awkward with new people that come.
Are you?
Chase them.
People stick together in villages like this. A bit naughty, really, that is.
You're not instantly welcoming.
I just love my village people, and I feel very comfortable with them.
That's a shame. I mean, it is sad.
It is sad. It has ruined lots of villages like this. It was a quaint fishing village at one time. I mean, it's now a yuppie village, really.
It looks like one person's rural idyll is another's village under siege. There is trouble in paradise. What's more, I was about to meet some of them. Tonight is the opening of the Westcroft Gallery's latest exhibition, and the locals are the stars, captured on film. It seems to me that once you've got your quaint little fisherman's cottage, the next must-have is a photo of the last remaining fisherman to hang in it. Nostalgia is clearly a powerful selling tool in the rural property game.
How did you discover it?
Well, we spent about 10 years coming to various parts of Cornwall and just fell in love with this. So we started looking and we're very depressed because there was nothing around. I mean, people turn up with cash and they say, you know, we'll buy this place, but can you be out in 2 weeks? And because we live in Surrey, I mean, that's very hard to actually react that quickly.
Right.
So that was really depressing, and it was only the sheer good fortune of hearing something before it even got on the market that we actually had the opportunity.
Because things go like that.
They do, but we love it because it's just unspoilt and beautifully kept, and it's very friendly, and it's the real England from where we live.
And because this is so unspoilt, you know, you're not going to get all the tourist buses coming down here and
No, it's not, yeah, exactly.
you know,
There's no coaches.
and the other thing we particularly like, there's a very nice mixture of what I call people who've lived here all their lives, you know, a vast majority of their lives, and people from outside, and there's a sort of a nice village.
Everyone gets on.
Everyone gets on.
We are second homeowners here.
Oh, right.
Yes, we come from Surrey.
Okay.
Well, I do. My dear other half, Tony, is a Plymouth boy. There's a sort of magical hook somehow to people. It pulls them back, I think. I do love the sea and country together. I like that juxtaposition.
How often do you manage to come down?
We don't let a month go by without a foot in our house. It may be the last day of the month, you know, and we may not come back till the last day of the next month, but yes, always.
Because there's quite a community of second home owners as well. There are almost two communities that sort of interlink.
I mean, do you ever feel any tension?
Never.
That kind of
Never.
You're conscious of making an effort to
You bet.
integrate.
You bet. You bet.
But how has this place reached the point where the only fisherman you're likely to see is the one hanging on the wall in a fashionable gallery? I went to meet a local historian to pry into Kingsand's past.
If you go back far enough, there wasn't much here, because during medieval times the seas around here were infested with pirates, and so it just was not safe to live down here. And they weren't so much interested in cargoes as people, because they were interested in taking slaves. No Cornish fisherman would have dared venture out of sight of land.
Was there a big landowner? I mean, how did that work?
The local landowner would have been the Edgecombe family, the Edgecombes.
Right. How long has that estate
Edgecombe
been?
Well, for long. The estate was established around about the mid-16th century.
Ever since then, the Edgecombe family have dominated the village, using their land to generate massive incomes from farming and mining. Understand this, and you understand the historic power of property. Once, they owned up to 30,000 acres of Cornwall from coast to coast.
It's interesting to know what they didn't own, in fact. They sold off a whole load of property in 1919. The fifth Earl died and they were loaded with death duties, and so they had to sell off a load of property, and they sold off 40 houses in the village.
In one fell swoop?
That was it, 1919, the whole lot went.
But the ones buying weren't the local fishermen.
Remember, back in 1919, it wasn't the fashion to own your own home. People weren't really interested in owning their own home. They didn't want the responsibility of the maintenance of it. They were too busy sort of earning their livings. People preferred to rent then.
The few villagers who could afford to bought their homes, and the remainder were sold to private landlords. One woman bucked the trend. In 1938, WJEC made a fortuitous decision that would transform her prospects. She bought her home. In Kingsand, she was a bit of a property pioneer. How long have you lived in this house?
About 73 years.
It's a long time ago. Was it quite a normal thing to try and buy your house?
No, never known very much, really. They bought them after the war when they were a bit better off.
Right. How did you go about buying it then? Who did you borrow the money from?
Well, it was a gentleman that used to come around here, and he was a bespoke tailor, and he mortgaged it for me.
And how much did it cost?
£150, and I had to put £50 down. It was very lucky I had a bit of money left me, so I could manage it.
That was your deposit?
Deposit, £50, and £50 was it for the solicitor.
Right. And so you borrowed, how much did you borrow in all? You borrowed
100, that's all, yes.
Right. So what were the repairs? Here they are.
That was
7 shillings in all.
That's right,
a week
yes.
you were paying. Was that a lot of money?
Oh yes, it was. The rent was only 5 shillings a week.
Right, so you're paying a little bit more.
Yes,
You were paying a little bit more for the...
Yes.
How much was 2 shillings a week in those days? What could you get with 2 shillings a week?
Oh, lots. £2 of sugar, 4 pence halfpenny. A loaf of bread, 4 pence halfpenny. That would be 9 pence. and you could go to the butcher's and have 6 penny worth of meat.
And how much would that get you? What kind of...
Oh, we'd make a dinner with that. Had to. I'm telling you.
So 2 shillings, but so 2 shillings was
we were poor.
and 2 shillings was a lot of money.
Well, yes, yes.
What did your friends in the village think about the fact that you were buying?
Them, never said nothing to them. No, never said nothing
Why didn't
about
you tell them?
Well, no, I didn't bother.
So you started paying on December the 5th, 1938. Would that be right? Would that be about right? And all paid off in 6 years.
And I've never paid any rent since 44.
Right, that seems incredible now.
But I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky, really. You know, it's those that's got the money rule the roost.
A 20% mortgage rate was steep by modern standards, but Doll's 6 years of scrimping have given her the freedom that only property ownership can give. She was plainly a little bit ashamed of doing it at the time. She didn't tell any of her friends that she'd bought, that was in the process of buying the house, which is very interesting when you consider the complete obsession that we all have with property now and owning property, and how how happy everybody is to talk about the size of their mortgages and the profitability of the deal that they've just done or whatever. That's a big change. The old heart of Kingsand lost a few more locals when the council estate was built in the 1940s. Villagers renting tumble-down fishermen's cottages jumped at the chance to live in centrally heated luxury, complete, it was rumoured, with indoor toilets. This propelled properties in the village onto the open market and left the locals up on the hillside. In 1981, Mrs. Thatcher's right to buy gave the tenants the chance to get on the property ladder, helped by some very large discounts. They very sensibly leapt at the chance, and now over 2/3 of the estate is privately owned. The problem, of course, was that no affordable housing was ever built to take its place. So with ex-council houses now changing hands for up to £300,000, the next generation have nowhere to live. It was a kind of generational robbery. But it's not just the affordable housing that's disappeared. The work's dried up too. How many boats would there have been here at the sort of height of the fishing trade?
There were about 40, I think, or more. Considerable. Of course, these boats were big and they were landed at catches in Plymouth.
But they were based here? Or they were based here.
That's where the fishermen lived.
Yeah. Owned by people who lived here. That's a lot of jobs to go, isn't it?
There's a hell of a lot of people employed. Look at farming. There were something like 10 farms in the area. We were employing people. That's all been amalgamated into one principal farm now. And there's no dairy farms now, of course. They've all gone because of the decline of agriculture. I don't know how a small farmer can survive. Very, very few small farmers left in Cornwall now.
Over the past 25 years, the current Earl of Mount Edgecombe has merged almost all his small farms into one large holding. But there are a few tenant farmers still hanging on. Chris Wilton's family have farmed this land for 200 years. As tenants rather than owners, they could only stand and stare as house prices climbed and climbed. And what about these chalets along here? What's the story behind them?
Well, the chalets sort of started popping up back in the 30s, as far as I'm aware, when people were evacuated from towns and cities during the Blitz, and a lot of people wanted to settle, so they just built a little wooden shack on the side of the hill. 6, 7 years ago, they're changing hands for about 60,000. Now you're looking at 200,000.
For a wooden chalet?
For a wooden chalet. Some of them still got outside toilets and bathrooms. And you don't own the land it's on either. You got to pay rent on that.
Completely mad.
Nothing down here's cheap.
Chris's parents live in the farmhouse, and he and his partner Alison would love to buy a home nearby. But it isn't that simple.
I'm probably working about 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. It's a long, hard slog, but then it's something that I want to do, and it's something that I enjoy.
How many employees are there on the farm?
None.
None at all?
No, just me and my father.
Is the farm making a profit at the moment?
It is. It turns a small profit, enough for me to draw a small wage.
Do you mind me asking how much money you make at the end of the day?
I draw a wage from the farm of £315 a month. Not a week, a month.
extraordinary.
Alison has a separate income stream. She works off the farm.
And your earnings are very necessary.
Yes, yes, that's what we live on, basically.
Unfortunately, farming is a hard job, but ultimately people have to provide food for the masses. It doesn't come from nowhere.
In fact, Chris and Ali have spent the last 5 years living in a caravan across the yard. How much could you borrow? Do you get any idea?
I think on your
we
earnings we could go for about 80,000.
Yeah, that would stretch us right to the limit, I think.
Would £80,000 buy you anything around here?
No, cheapest house in Millbrook that we've seen is 139,000.
Can you save anything at the moment?
No.
So you wouldn't have a deposit,
No.
would you?
No.
What about affordable housing?
We're both in our 30s. We have no children, no disabilities. I earn a wage, so we're sort of in that limbo area where none of that applies to us.
So you just don't qualify?
No.
Nope.
Not
But
at
even
all.
the housing schemes are £400 a month. Which is still more than I earn.
Until his father retires, Chris won't know for sure whether he'll get to take over the tenancy, which comes with the right to live in the farmhouse. You're not going to live in the caravan until the farmhouse comes free, are you?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, but if that's what it takes.
You could be talking about 20 years, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we won't be here for 20 years.
Hopefully not. But if necessary, then yes.
So, the fishing's long gone, and farming scarcely pays enough to buy a garden shed. Property, though, looks like it's Kingsand's new economy. So some locals must be raking it in, mustn't they?
We are in Garrett Street, and we are ripping the place out because it is in a poor state and basically putting it back together.
I met up with local builders, Frodo and Mark. What proportion of your work is local people and what proportion is sort of incomers?
Personally, I'd say about a third. As a third to, you know, that third is second homeowners.
Kitchen is a big one. Kitchens, bathrooms, tidy that up. They don't mind keeping it looking cottagey a lot of the time because, you know, that is what it is. It is a cottage.
They buy into the tweeness of it all. They're quite happy with the fact that the house is looking ramshackled and kind of there's no straight walls.
The funny thing is that people buy into the actual atmosphere and the character, and then it all becomes second homes and it's not there anymore. And then they start complaining about that.
So it's kind of self-defeating in a way.
Yeah.
I think really it's kind of a rich man's playground, isn't it? It's kind of, you know, oh, we can afford to do that, well, let's just do it because we can. So there's a lot of people that are moving out of these more affluent areas, like up there, coming down here, playing, you know, playing at it, really, and then making local people suffer for it.
How do you feel about that as locals?
Yeah, it does wind you up. I've actually been moved house 4 times in 4 years at the moment. Just because of the property market going up, you're renting, people sell the house because it's a good time to sell. And it is a pain, it's hard to find somewhere, and the rents have shot right up.
But that's where it's a little bit naughty, because what people are spending, like, in a holiday down in Kingsand for maybe a week. I mean, there's, down on the Cleve there, there's that 14-bedroom house, and I think that goes out at a £2,000 a week.
Yeah.
So that might be like a fifth of some people's annual wage. And I think that's kind of like what really annoys locals, is because, oh, look how much I've spent just on a week's holiday. You know, it's like, well, you know, I don't even earn that in like 3 months, you know.
Has it felt like you've been kind of squeezed out?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was actually homeless with my family over Christmas about 2 years ago, and you know, it is wrong. With all the empty houses, it is totally wrong that it's going on, really. You know, there should be a law that you should rent out your house.
Why isn't there more anger about that?
I don't know why there isn't more uprising about it, really. There is anger, but you need to take a leaf out of the French book and do a bit more with writing. Stand up for your rights. You know, it does need to go on, because it just isn't happening and they're getting away with it.
Do you think there's any way out of that situation?
Yeah, build a great big wall across to the top of Cornwall or Devon and say, sorry, you can't come in.
It'd need more than that. The price of the average house in Cornwall is now a staggering 14 times the average salary. I'm kind of outraged. It brings out the socialist in you, doesn't it? I mean, it's extraordinary. And I thought this was going to be a nice story about, you know, pretty Cornish cottages overlooking the beach and, you know, fairly, on the whole, nice London people coming down and spending their holidays here. And you discover that actually people have been made homeless. I am genuinely shocked. something in this market has quite plainly gone wrong. Porner made flesh, to see what role the property boom is playing in the transformation of the countryside. 100 years ago, the Edgecombe family owned most of the peninsula on which Kingsand sits. If you lived in the village, the chances are you probably worked the Earl's land or rented one of his cottages. But with farming in decline and much of the village sold off, I was intrigued to see where the present-day Earl sits in the property picture. I don't think I ever have met an Earl before. I've met a couple of presidents and prime ministers and stuff like that. But no, not a member of the landed aristocracy. The family seat is Mount Edgecombe House, built in the 16th century, bombed in the Second World War, and rebuilt in the 1950s. Death duties, introduced in the late 19th century, changed the life of the landed gentry completely. As each new Earl succeeded the last, those infamous inheritance taxes took another chunk out of the estate. Until finally, the family pile was flogged off in 1971. The Earl now lives down the road, rather more modestly. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
John, nice to meet you. Much to my surprise, the 8th Earl isn't even English. He's a sheep farmer from New Zealand. He offered me a tour of the ancestral home that his branch of the family came into in 1965.
Ah! My gosh, I've taken points off, you know.
I know.
Do you normally drive yourself? Or do you have a driver as well?
I don't have a driver.
No. I'm just sort of wondering, you know. Now, the whole 800 acres and this house, stables, was all included in the price of about $250,000, I think it was.
The house was actually sold to the local council. $250,000 would get you a cliff-top chalet now. And so, I mean, when this was a really big country house in the heyday of the estate, then we had, what was it?
43 odd
40 staff?
Staff. Not only in the house, but in the gardens as well.
Yeah, and there would have been big, you know, kind of hunting parties.
That's right, shooting parties and, you know, pounds and all the rest of the drama. The people were expected to bow and scrape, and did. I mean, that's how things were in those days, you know.
Of course.
But times have moved on. Canal, 6th Earl.
And do you ever wear the robes?
No, I've never bothered. I've done it for fun.
Dressing up.
Dressing up
for the kids.
For the Christmas party or something like that, you know, when it's demanded of me. So I think people think that an Earl doesn't do anything. I don't know, just sits in the House of Lords or governs his subjects or whatever. You know. Well, those days, as far as I'm concerned, have passed, and in my case, never were.